If you're thinking about making a move to the Austin area, a lot of people are asking the wrong questions. It's not, is Austin a buyer's market? It's for who and where it still is a buyer's market and where it's absolutely not. I'm gonna walk you through what buyers are actually experiencing right now. Leverage, inventory, negotiations, competition, and what that means for you as a buyer, where buyers still have an edge and where they don't, and what that realistically means for you if you're considering buying in 2026. So let's talk about what a buyer's market really means and what it doesn't, right? A buyer's market does not mean, homes are on clearance across the board, there's absolutely no competition, and every single seller is absolutely just desperate to sell you their home. What it does mean is more leverage, more negotiation power, more choices, and a flexible closing timeframe. Two different buyers shopping in Austin the exact same week could have two completely different experiences right now, depending on their mindset and what their strategy is. So the real answer to, is Austin a buyer's market? Well, that's a lot more of a complicated question than it really sounds on the surface, because the greater Austin area is built of tons of different micro markets that all kind of play by their own rules. So when and where does it feel like a buyer's market here in Austin? Well, it feels like a buyer's market when it comes to homes that have been sitting on the market for 45 to 90 days or more. These homes that have been overpriced initially and they've gone through multiple price reductions. Maybe they went under contract and went back on the market, where the sellers are starting to feel a little bit desperate. A lot of sellers kind of over expect how much they can get for their home because they think it's still COVID times, and they list really, really high, which is a huge mistake because those overpriced properties tend to often sell below market value, which can be a great opportunity for you, the buyer. And it can also feel like a buyer's market in new build communities where there's already a high inventory, but the builder is still actually completing homes and adding to that high inventory because they've got a lot more pressure to move those homes and get them sold. So my clients and smart buyers that are focusing on these types of properties are actually, seeing a lot more wins when it comes to negotiation of terms, negotiation and flexibility on their own timeline when it comes to closing day, and just seller paid concessions like rate buydowns and things like that. This is where the buyers actually feel in control. So let's talk about when and where it feels balanced, which can sometimes to a buyer feel a little bit confusing if they don't have the right guidance. So the typical traits of a home in Austin's balanced market are things like, a home that was priced appropriately from the start on day one when it hit the market, homes that are move-in ready and extremely clean that don't require a lot of renovations, homes in really good school districts, and new build communities that don't have a lot of inventory and are still really desirable. A little bit of a reality check, but even though Austin as a whole is considered a strong buyer's market, these types of homes still move quickly. But buyers can still negotiate, they just have to act decisively. This is where I often see buyers make a mistake. They think it's that buyer's market, so they have time, and they end up kind of dragging their feet, they're not acting decisively, and they miss out on the home that they really wanted because another buyer swooped in and got it under contract. So where is it not a buyer's market, right? So the homes that are not in Austin's buyer's market are entry-level homes that are below the median price point. Those homes are still moving quickly because there's still a lot of demand. And speaking of demand, it never really left the Austin area, it just kind of got quieter and shifted. So the next thing I want to talk about is why 2026 feels different and why it can feel confusing for people that aren't making moves with a solid strategy. When it comes to the national market, Austin actually corrected well ahead of the curve from the rest of the country and major metropolitan areas across the US. So they made those corrections early on. Inventory is high, but it can be confusing because desirable communities and desirable homes still actually move fairly fast. I see a lot of buyers that are waiting for pre-COVID pricing and a 4% interest rate. And typically you don't see both of those things at the same time. We saw it during COVID, as interest rates drop, home values go up. And as interest rates go up, home values go down, which is what we're seeing right now. The good news is you can lock in a home at a really, really good price, which is what I'm seeing my clients and smart buyers in Austin's market doing right now. And then considering potentially, refinancing and getting a better interest rate in the future if and when interest rates do drop. But you can never change the price that you paid for a home. So that's the one thing that you have to lock in. 2026 isn't about waiting for a crash, it's about coming in with a really good, solid strategy. I've seen buyers get confused and make mistakes, and they think it's a buyer's market because they read those headlines and they think they have time when they find the perfect home. And I've seen people lose out on that perfect home for them and their families because another buyer came in that was moving with purpose, being decisive, and got the home under contract and kind of took it out from the buyers that really, really wanted it. In juxtaposition to that, I was working with a buyer client who was extremely decisive. He knew what he wanted and he was ready to make a move. He put an offer in on a home. He knew that we had the option period to renegotiate based on the inspection if anything came back. And he got that property locked up under contract. We did the inspection. It wasn't crazy, nothing was majorly wrong with the home, but we still negotiated an extra about $25,000 off the contract price during the option period. So the good news is, for buyers that can lock up a contract on a home, you can actually renegotiate the terms during that option period. So you're not married to a home as soon as you get it under contract. You still have flexibility, and if it doesn't work out and it doesn't end up being the perfect home for you, you can back out and you're just out the option fee, which is often a few $100. Before we get too deep into it, if you're ever considering moving to the Austin area and you want a little bit of guidance, don't hesitate to reach out. You can also text the number on the screen with the word RELO or scan the QR code to get my ultimate Austin relocation guide. Just gonna have a ton of information, a lot of helpful things that'll make your move a lot easier, especially if you're in the research phase right now. So let's talk about where buyer leverage actually exists in this market and shift a little bit from theory to actual tactics. My clients and other smart sellers are finding a lot of wins when it comes to, negotiating the terms, not just the offer price, and getting sellers to, come up with concessions that actually reduce what you pay at closing without changing the offer price, because we still want to make sure that the home appraises at value if you're getting a loan. We're seeing buyers win with flexible closing terms, flexible timelines that actually work for them and or their families, and not being pressured by sellers. Buyers' leverage didn't disappear, it just shifted. Inspection leverage, we talked about it earlier, but the contract price isn't exactly what you pay and you're not married to that home. You still have the option period where you can renegotiate those terms, closing flexibility when it comes to timeline, and builder incentives in new build communities. This is where understanding when, where, and on what homes buyer leverage still is really, really strong in the Austin area, because it's not the same everywhere, in every zip code, in every neighborhood, or even on every home within that neighborhood. Next, I want to shift into common mistakes that I see people make in this quote unquote buyer's market. Mistake number one is waiting for that universal signal, so to say. Pro tip, it doesn't exist. And if it did, every other buyer would flood the market at the exact same time and we'd see home values skyrocket. Mistake number two is treating Austin like one singular market. The reality is there's, again, tons of micro markets within the greater Austin area, and they all play by their own rules, and you have to understand the rules to play the game. And the last mistake that I see a lot of people making is focusing just on the price point on the contract, not on the leverage. There's so many other opportunities to make you have a beneficial buyer contract at the closing table that aren't just about the price point. You can get rate buy downs, you can get seller concessions. There's so many more opportunities for leverage for buyers that a lot of people miss. You don't need perfect timing, you need informed timing and a solid strategy. So let's answer the question, should you move in 2026? It makes sense for you if you're moving for work or the lifestyle of Austin, if you have kind of a mid to long range horizon on when you're planning on selling your home, want leverage without peak competition. Now, it might not be for you if you want zero competition on every single home, you want instant appreciation on your home value, or you're trying to buy at the absolute bottom because we don't know what the future holds. Property values could go down slightly before they go back up. If you're trying to figure out exactly where you can find leverage in today's market based on your priorities, your lifestyle, the commute that you want, and all the things that matter to you, that's actually why I make these videos. I'd love to help. Don't hesitate to reach out. You're gonna see my number on the screen. And like I said, I actually make these videos so that I can connect with people just like you and help them make a smart move. So Austin is ultimately still a fantastic place to live, at least in my opinion. I love it here, but it just rewards buyers that understand how the actual markets work here. I've got a few videos that go deeper into different areas, mistakes and regrets that I've seen people make in the past. If you want to keep digging, feel free. Otherwise, don't hesitate to reach out. Like I said, I actually make these videos because I do want to hear from you guys.